I'm Tom Toole. She's Stacey Mitchell. This is Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. And we got some real estate stuff to talk about here today, Stacey. So Sarah, our normal co-host, congratulations. She had a baby on Mother's Day. Very exciting.
Madeline May.
And Madeline May. Pretty wild on Mother's Day. I mean, I guess that's like the ultimate Mother's Day present, right? Is, hey, here's your baby.
Exactly.
So that's so very exciting for her. So Stacey's going to be here the next few weeks. Super excited to have her. We're not going to miss a beat. So let's get right into the news. So over the weekend, the Philadelphia Inquirer came out with an article talking about the supply of homes for sale and what the predictions are for how long this low inventory is going to last. So to give some perspective, what we're seeing from a statistical and data standpoint is that in Chester, Montgomery, Delaware counties, we're seeing a little less, a little more than a month's supply of homes. It kind of fluctuates a little bit county by county. And in Philadelphia, we're seeing just under a 2-month supply of homes. And to give some perspective, a normal market where buyers and sellers have equal leverage is how much, Stacey?
6 months.
6 months. So we are at 1/6 to 1/3.
Crazy.
Favoring sellers right now. So this has been a big pain point for a lot of buyers. So in the article here, they talked about a lot of different things. And I wanted to tell you what we're seeing on the ground, because a lot of times there's like these sexy headlines or these juicy stories that are out there, and they aren't real. It's not actually what's really happening. So, and the reporter here, Michaela Bond, I've actually interviewed with her a couple times. Great reporter, so she knows her stuff. That's not my point here. It's more the opinions that we're seeing. So right away, there was one thing that jumped out at me that they quoted a Philadelphia economist that there may be some supply relief at the earliest, maybe autumn. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm not sure where the data is coming from for that, but I'm not so sure that we're going to have relief by autumn. Mm-hmm.
Well, I agree with you there, and we'll get into the reasons why in a second. So let me just give you some other quotes from the article here. So a couple pieces of data. New listings were up 140% in the Philadelphia metro area in April compared with the same time last year. So right away, the data set is skewed because you know what happened last April?
Right. We're in shutdown.
We couldn't do anything. You couldn't show any houses in person. You couldn't have a buyer come over to your house. Everything was done on a Zoom call or a FaceTime. So that's the first issue I have with this, is that they're looking at year over year data, and you got to be really careful right now because 12 months ago, we still weren't able to do any in-person activities. I mean, that went from March 16th until May 19th. So we're still kind of in that zone. So any year over year data, you might as well throw out the window. And because of that, I don't know that you can use these year over year trends to forecast what's going to happen in the fall. So that's kind of item one. And then, there was a couple case studies in here. They talked about, buyers getting very upset, crying on the phone, being really downtrodden. So, going through all this and knowing that certainly it's a very competitive market, pretty incredible market conditions. What are you seeing in terms of buyers having to write offers relative to when they get one signed?
Well, the buyers, you have to prepare them like 110% of what's really going on in the market today, because they come in to the situation based on stories that they've heard or family experiences, things like that. So we have to sit them down and make sure that they're fully aware of what is entailed going forward, and that they have the fortitude and the grit and actually the motivation. The motivation has to be there for them to want to go through this buying process right now. So if they're fully aware of what's going on and what's going to be, how the offer process is going to take place, then we can have success. And I've had pretty good success in this market. So it's just getting them on board and educate them very well about what to expect.
Well, and what people aren't talking about is the number of sales are up this year. So just because people are losing out on offers, just because there's intensified demand for a lot of reasons which we can get into, it doesn't mean that there's less sales activity. There's less inventory, but this is really simple supply and demand. And they have a chart here and they kind of walked you through literally exactly what we said, where they identify a balanced market at 6 months, which I love. And then there was some additional information that came out from the one of the chief economists at Realtor.com. Her name's Danielle Hale, and she said homes are selling much faster this year than last year, when houses were also selling quickly. Well, they weren't this time last year. I would totally disagree with that, at least not in Pennsylvania. So remember, real estate's super local, and we were the most aggressively shut down, forget state, region in the country, right? Like metro markets. So I don't agree with her there. And then she goes on to say you need more churn in the real estate market, and you need it to happen a little bit less quickly. Then they give us the new listing statistics for April, and part of that, there is a good, kind of clarification point here, in part because last year was so terrible. That's why we're seeing such a jump in inventory. Well, that's absolutely correct. And you can't just eliminate that or erase that, because that was something that's never happened in the 20 years I've been doing this. So not only do we have some skewed data because of the year-over-year stats, then they go on to say peak selling season typically starts in early May, and listings stay elevated through June and July. So the inventory outlook for the year ahead will become clearer approaching midsummer. That's another issue I have with this opinion, because she's talking nationally, right? And that's fine. We got to look at the local market. And I know in the local market here, we see about 60% of our business gets done each year. It closes before June 30th. So when you get to July, when you get to August, that's when we typically see inventory kind of tick down a little bit. Statistically, the most homes hit the market in May. That's documented across the country. We usually see the market ramp up in that March, April, May, June period, and then July it actually tips off, specifically like the 4th of July. Like that's kind of when we see the market change a little bit. So now I know, Stacey, you've got a much different perspective here, because last year you were getting licensed and when all this was happening and joining our team, and have had some tremendous success. So what do you think about this opinion from Danielle Hale, chief economist at Realtor?
Well, you're right, because I don't have my own personal experience to look back on, and I appreciate you providing all that information to me. So just my experience has been completely different. And I think just from seeing the market and seeing the inventory being so low, I'm not quite sure where that information, like you said, is coming from. I think it's definitely national. There seems to be sporadically more inventory. It depends on what week. This past couple of weeks, it's been extremely low, in my opinion. So, yeah, I'm not sure what the fall and going into the winter is going to hold for us. It seems like the economy is speculated to improve greatly in the third quarter and in the fall. So maybe that'll boost. I'm not sure, but there's a lot of factors, a lot of things going on.
Well, and you bring up a good point there, and what she does go on to say here is that there is absolutely pent-up selling demand out there, which I 100% agree with that. I mean, and it's because of really three factors, right? And you're talking about the economy boosting. Zillow did a survey at the beginning of the year why sellers weren't putting their homes on the market, and there was really three reasons, and this totaled like 75% of all the respondents was uncertainty about health because of the pandemic, uncertainty about finances because people are still, the unemployment rate's still in the 6% range. It was about 3.5% last February. It's like 6.8, 6.9. And on top of that, they're just uncertain about life in general. So there are folks out there that maybe want to make a move, but they're unsure where they're going to go to. They're unsure what the outcome's going to be. And there's some additional data here too, that Zillow surveyed 110 economists and real estate experts, and 43% expect housing supply to increase in the second half of the year. And more than a quarter surveyed said inventory won't grow until the first half of 2022. And then 21% predicted the second half of next year or later. So you see that like the experts are kind of split on this. So we're not picking apart what this particular economist is saying from Realtor.com. It's that you got to look at what's going on locally, because what I'm clear on is you go down to places like Texas and Florida, it's a much different environment than up here. You go to Massachusetts, it's kind of on the other end of the spectrum because people are still getting vaccinated and employment's not back. And I mean, you look at like restaurants and other places, they don't have the same amount of employees that they used to have. Right. So, if you were to, let's say you get your crystal ball working here, Stacey, right? And this is what we want to. When do you envision things happening? Because there is one key indicator which I'll hit on, then I want to toss it to you. Is that last month, and it's through the month of March, not through April. It was the first month since June of last year we saw new listings outpace pending sales. So now it wasn't by much. In Chester County, it was like 8 homes. In Delaware County, it was 35. I mean, it's not much, but it's always that first increase. It can usually be the early indicator. So you're talking to a client. What are you telling them right now? And then after we kind of get through this, we're going to talk about how to win bidding wars and some strategies there. But I want to get clear on the economic data here first.
Well, the increase in listings could be that people are becoming a little bit more comfortable about what's going on out there. As the vaccines are becoming more saturated in our area, this will allow people to feel free to move around more. So folks that were considering moving or listing their homes prior to COVID and then put it on pause, maybe they're reconsidering that. So we'll be able to get, those homes and those listings on the market. Maybe some of the baby boomers are relocating south or west. So that is going to bring some inventory into our area, and they won't be looking to purchase in this area because they're actually relocating out of the state. So those could be some factors that will help the inventory in our area too.
Well, and that's a really great observation, because the homes that people want right now, they want that like single family home. They want the 20-year property because they can get in a mortgage payment that's going to be locked in at a really low rate. So, and that's really how you buy the house anyway, right?
Correct.
It's cash to close and your payment. So, I do anticipate, I think people that are in these big homes that maybe they felt safe there, but now that they are vaccinated, or that they're people just feel like that they're able to go do things. This time last year, it was a different world. That's probably going to enable them to move. I do agree with that. That's a really great observation. So,
and they're realizing they might not need all that space anymore. The maintenance is becoming an issue, and just downsizing, just getting out of the area. So, so I'm hopeful that we'll have more inventory based on those two factors.
Sure. And what I find interesting here too is that there was a survey that realtor.com released last month that nationwide 10% of homeowners plan to list their homes for sale this year, and 16% more in the next 2 to 3 years. And that really reflects what we're talking about, is that there's a comfort level here. It's going to take a little bit of time for things to ramp up, because you look back at last March, things were rolling, people were getting excited, and then all of a sudden you can't sell anything. You're done. No more real estate in Pennsylvania until we hear otherwise. And they were. I think a lot of people anticipated that there would be a big boom of people coming back to the market. And the only ones that really are moving, especially last year, were the people that had to make a move. They had serious motivation. They were stuck in their houses. And at the same time, the savvy seller, if they want to cash out, I'd be looking at sooner than later, because, right now you have lower rates. There's more, you get these competitive bids coming in with waived appraisal contingencies, waived inspections. I want to take advantage of that, not just a higher price and have to go through all those other hoops that are involved.
Exactly. Right. So for sellers, that if you even considered slightly, definitely reconsider. It's a great time to take advantage of the market conditions, cash out, get as much equity out of the home as you possibly can. And if there is competition, if there are many buyers that are looking at your home, they will waive the contingencies. Inspections could be waived. So the maintenance issues that you were, dreading doing or putting off, they might not even be a factor at this point.
So I think that's a really good observation, and it's really, really critical that you need to look at the right time for you to sell. And we'll talk about how to win bidding wars in the next segment after we break here in a few minutes. So there's one last piece to this article, and I always love talking about this, because these are questions we get a lot. They talk about single family new constructions in general in the country. So in March, after 2 months of declines, the single family construction starts nationwide were up 15%. So these are new homes that are permitted to be built, is what that statistic means. So that's up 15%. And, in Philadelphia, people are kind of rushing to get permits now because they're going to be reducing the property tax abatement next year. What do you see as new construction factoring into our marketplace? Because it sounds great. People love new stuff, right? Is that really going to be something that's going to help the inventory challenge that a lot of buyers are seeing right now?
That could be a yes or no. My experience is there's not a whole lot available as far as new construction. I've gotten a couple buyers into new construction, but there really is not that much available out there. As soon as a new development or a phase of a development becomes available, they're eaten up pretty quickly. They're snapped up. The lots are gone, and the construction is 6 months to a year. The material costs are getting higher, so that could definitely be a concern. So that we have to make sure that that doesn't hinder the new construction with all the material costs rising.
So to give some perspective here, lumber prices, right? Now this is a big issue right now because there's major supply chain problems happening, and lumber prices in general, they've risen by 130% since before the pandemic, which at some National Association of Home Builders data, it adds an estimated $24,000 to $36,000 onto the price of a single family home. So you're already paying, tens of thousands of dollars more. And, to give some perspective too, because you got to look at the whole market here. Now, tell everyone kind of the areas you serve, because we're a regional team. So we go all the way in the city. We go all the, Chester County, Delaware County, Montgomery County. What areas do you primarily work in? Because there is some new construction opportunities I do want to hit on.
Chester County and Delaware County.
Yes. So, and that's my point, is that typically in Chester County, you got to go pretty far west or south to some of the more rural areas, or like some of the these onesie twosie lots where they're kind of like subdivided off another property. So it's usually like a spec home if it's new construction. And the suburban new construction markets are either super pricey, to your point. I mean, you go into places along the main line, and your taxes are outrageous, and it's a lot of money. So, I mean, you're looking at, $1 million, $2 million in some places if it's like Lower Merion or Radnor. Chester County, Delaware County, a little different depending on where you are. There are some new construction opportunities in Philadelphia. And again, there's still not a lot of them. I mean, this is an old area. So it's great to say, hey, new construction is going to help. It's going to be an opportunity. In my view, it's not going to save the day here.
Definitely not going to save the day.
So, knowing that's the case, you got the buyer that says, or you got the seller that says, hey, I'm going to wait till things calm down. I want to wait till the market's not so fast paced, or I want to wait until there's more options out there for me to buy. How are you handling that with them?
Well, they'll probably be waiting about 4 to 6 years.
So tell me more about that. 4 to 6 years. That's a long time. I mean, I'll be a lot older then. Maybe 4 to 6 years older.
Exactly. Me too. No, I'm turning back the clock. But the buyers that are coming into the market that become a little frustrated and say they're going to wait it out, we have to make sure that they understand everything's pretty fluid as far as the interest rates and the appraised monthly. So for nationally, it was 15% increase in the appraised value of homes. So that breaks down to about 1.3% monthly. And interest rates just dropped again to 3% or below 3% the past week.
Yep. Yeah. And this is another thing people have been talking about, is that, hey, rates are going up. You got to, well, guess what? They came down. It's actually a little more affordable than it was.
Exactly. So you just want to remind the buyers that this is the conditions now. It's not going to change in the next couple of years. One, because the millennials. The millennials is a huge segment of population, bigger than the baby boomers. And 47% of all mortgage applications that were made in the past couple of months have been millennials.
It's a big number.
Big number. So they're in the buying market right now. And typically they don't have contingencies. They're renters. They're not selling a home. They're getting into their first home. So they're going to be in the market for a number of years. So, buyers have to understand that. The inventory, if it doesn't increase, we're still going to have the number of buyers.
So same number of buyers, still a lot of demand. So the people that want to wait, it's how long do you want to wait? And then there's the question of, what are you losing from your net worth? I mean, because this is a wealth building strategy to buy a home. I mean, if you want to pay someone else's mortgage, go right ahead. So that's a really good observation. So overall, I mean, what I will say is, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. It's Michaela Bond. Great article. Don't agree totally with the Realtor.com economist that's on there. Definitely more of a national perspective, but that's why we're here. That's why we're on the radio talking about this locally for the greater Philadelphia area, because that's really what we want to focus on. So, at that note, what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break here, and then we're going to come back and talk to you about how to win these bidding wars, some of the strategies available, what sellers are looking for in offers. I'm Tom Toole. She's Stacey Mitchell. This is Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. What we want to hit on next is a press release that came out from Zillow yesterday. Zillow, the Google of real estate. Everyone knows them. So what this press release said, and it's going to lead us into a great segue here and some real life case studies of what we're doing to help people on the front lines, is the headline in the press release: 41% of agents say cash offers are the most effective strategy. Well, thanks for the nugget of knowledge there. That, not very shocking, but don't underestimate the power of pizza. We'll explain what that means in a second. The premise of the press release is that buying a home is really stressful, right? One of our goals is to make it a lot less stressful for people. It's also challenging right now in a market that's surging and is supercharged like today, where consumers are getting burnt out. They're at a point where they're like, I don't care. I just need a house. Let's get this over with. Because, while real estate can appear fun and sexy on the outside, we know what the grind is like on a daily basis. So the whole premise of the article here is they say, here's how you sweeten the offer. Here's some of the different offer strategies that are out there. And, right now, what Zillow is seeing from an infographic they had put together is that it's taking anywhere from 4 to 5 offers to get one accepted. I think the nationwide average was 4.6 or 4.8 to 1, which that's a lot of heartbreak, right?
It's a lot of heartbreak.
What's the most amount of offers you've written for a client?
Oh my gosh. Maybe 8.
8.
Yeah.
So how were those conversations? Like what happened at offer 1? Okay, there's some disappointment.
Offer 1 and 2, I think, are the hardest.
Yeah.
And they're the hardest. And then it kind of becomes like almost a job. Let's get out there and this house, we're going to put an offer in. And then they get the bad news again. And I think they expect not to get it at that point,
I hear you.
And then when you finally get the offer gets accepted, I mean, they can't even believe it. They're so happy and so appreciative and just so excited. So that is definitely the moment that I enjoy. And then getting them through the process into the finish line is even better. Like closing day, I always say, is the best day, because that's when it becomes real. They're homeowners and their dream is starting. So to me, that's the best day.
Well, that's probably the best day for them because the process is over finally. Yes. Oh, then they have to move in, though. I don't wish that on anybody. That's probably my least favorite part of the moving process, is the actual move and packing. We don't help with that, but we know some great moving companies we can refer you to. So you bring up a really good point there, and you said something I want to highlight. They look at the search as a job, right? Do you feel like there's too many people out there that don't look at this as like the biggest financial decision they'll make, the biggest business decision they're going to make for their family? Because I know I treat business decisions a lot differently than where am I going to eat dinner on a Saturday night, which I think some people look at their housing search like that.
Some of them do. Correct. Yeah.
So when you get them to flip into that business decision role, and we're going to run through all these different things you can do to get someone to win a bidding war. So you get, and I think that's really important. Probably step 1 is get them to treat this like a business decision, right?
Yes.
So how do you do that? What works for you there? I mean, besides losing properties, let's say you get them to do it before they lose a property. Like what strategies have worked best for you?
First thing, it was teach them how to scout out the property. So I set them up on the MLS with the automatic searches, and also in our database, and the criteria of the home. If something hits the market, goes all automatically to the inbox. Then it's their job to vet the property, do drive-bys, do your due diligence. What about the taxes? I send them buyer's estimated closing costs and monthly cost sheets, so that does this fit in the budget? Is it at a price point where we can go higher on our purchase price offer? Is it in hood? They have to vet that. And then if all those boxes are checked, schedule the showing, because we're not here to waste time. We're just not going to see houses if they, don't meet those standards right off the jump. Once we get into the home, we look at the mechanics of the home, the age of the roof. It's all about perusing the seller's disclosure, vetting the property as best we can to see if waiving offers would be an option. I mean, waiving inspections.
Yeah. Okay.
Would be an
I just want to be
option.
clear. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And if we do, are we going to fully waive inspections, or are we going to waive inspections but still do one for informational purposes? Or can we concede a certain amount of money towards any repairs or defects that may be found during the inspections? So there's many ways you can go about the inspection process.
So, so, I mean, and this is something obviously we train on, and it's one of the reasons you probably want to hook up with a team or someone that can actually tell you what to do, because normally you'd probably just go show them a house, right? I mean, if you didn't know anything. So again, if you're looking to get in the real estate industry, great segue there. We have a scholarship program available. It is realestatescholarshipprogram.com. We will pay for your licensing classes. No license, no problem. Check it out right there. So back to what you're talking about. So you're basically having like a business meeting with them up front.
Correct.
Like a consultation.
Absolutely. Yes.
So what if they don't want to commit to that and they just want to see a property? What do you do there?
Well, if they don't want to commit to that, then there's no point in seeing a property.
Sure.
Because that's what it's all about. Where's the motivation? You know, you have to find out the motivation. Why do they want to buy? Why are they moving?
Well, I agree with that, because a lot of people just get in, they want to go see a house. And I mean, we'll even do the meeting on site at the house if we can get them to commit for some time. So step one, understand the process. I mean, that wasn't even on the list of stuff we put down here to talk about. But if you don't know the process before you get into it, and then you've got a deadline of, hey, you got an hour to make a decision, because this is real life. This is what happens.
Real life.
I mean, some people get in and they know the deadline is at 5 o'clock or whatever, and they only have a limited amount of time to do that. So you get them to commit to understanding the process first, because this is a tough process to go through. And no matter, even if you bought a home 10 years ago, it's probably different now. So I love that. So then let's say they understand the process. You're in a multiple offer situation. There's 5-10 other people writing contracts on this home. Let's go through the different ways that the audience can win the property. I find this is really important. So we've codified this into a list, and this is what we share with all our clients here. So what's the first way? What would your first recommendation?
Obviously, the purchase price would be that's a big consideration. Are they able to go over the purchase price? It's usually 3 to 10% above asking price is what is recommended. But really, it's depending on the property. The second thing to consider is deposit money. How much money do the buyers have to put down? If you're working with a large deposit, put it all down. Put it all up front. Show the strength of your buyer.
Well, and let's hit on price real quickly. I think Steve Bazagni from our team said this in one of the trainings. In a lot of cases, the asking price is now the starting bid.
Absolutely.
Right?
It is the starting bid.
Not every home, but most homes. I mean, and you'll know if there's competition. That's where it's important for your agent to get that information for you. If the home's been on the market 7-10 days and there's no other offers, different situation. If there's 40 showings the first weekend, which you might think we're making up these numbers, we're not. We have a lot of case studies and documented data that we look at here through Showing Time, Appointment Center, and other things. So you have that many showings, then you likely are going to need to look at it as, okay, what's the price I'm willing to lose the home over?
Correct.
And that's the decision a lot of people are making, right? Is like if someone pays $1 more, I'm out.
Right. Yes.
Okay. So number one is be ready to go to your max number is what I'm hearing.
Be ready to go to your max number. So you won't be looking at homes that you're maxed pre-approved for, if that makes sense. So if your buyers are pre-approved for up to $350,000 for a home, you're not going to start looking at homes at $350,000. You have to back off and probably come into the $325 range.
And the reason for that is?
So you can go above asking price.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so you can, you know you're going to have to go above, and that's really important. So be ready to go above the asking price, go to your max number, and understand that the asking price is, a lot of cases, the starting bid. So that's really important. That's number one. And again, this is for this moment in time here. This is not how real estate operated any other year besides 2020 and 2021 for the 2 decades I've been doing this. So when you talk about deposit, so I find that a lot of agents don't treat the deposit with the magnitude that it weighs into an offer, right? So you said put down a large deposit. So what do you mean by that? How much should they be looking at? What kind of percentage?
Typically, earnest deposit would be 5% of the purchase price.
And we see a lot of agents, they come in, they're like, hey, here's $5,000 and it's a $500,000 home. Here's $10,000 and it's a $500,000 home. And the reason the deposit's important in the eyes of the seller is there's a box on line 722 of the agreement of sale in Pennsylvania. Normally it's checked. If your agent's not checking this as a buyer, you should fire that person immediately and find a new agent, because what it says is that the seller is limited to retaining the sums paid by the buyer as liquidated damages, including deposit money. So they haven't paid anything. And let's say it's the day before settlement, you lost 60 days on the market, right? Well, now you lost 60 days on the market. And the only thing $5,000 is a lot of money. If you're able to buy a $500,000 home, it's probably not going to change your life. And I'm not here to be casual with anyone's money. This is just the reality of these transactions. So you're saying 5% on deposit. If you really need to compete and go on deposit, what are you seeing some people do? I mean, what have you seen some of your clients do?
Well, some of our strategy, if the buyers have a full 20%, 30%, some buyers might have 40% deposit. What to their comfort level, I recommend going as heavy and, upfront as possible with that deposit. It shows their commitment, it shows their strength and their seriousness.
And to give some people some perspective, the seller doesn't automatically keep the deposit, right? If the buyer loses their job and can't get a mortgage and there's a mortgage contingency, they'll get the deposit back.
Correct.
The only way the deposit is kept is 3 ways in Pennsylvania. The buyer gives false or incomplete information. So they give something sort of fraudulent. They lie on their buyer's financial, something like that. Second is they don't pay their deposits on time. So obviously that's kind of a moot point if they haven't paid it yet. And the third is they don't do something they're supposed to, like show up to settlement and buy the property. So if there's a mortgage contingency, you can typically get that back. If there's an inspection contingency, we're going to talk about that next here. Typically, you can get that back. Or if there's an HOA or condo document review, you have that 5-day review period to get your deposit money back if you're unsatisfied. So you're recommending a heavy deposit to show you're not going to back out of the deal. That's really what the seller is concerned about, right?
Correct.
So asking price is the starting bid. Heavy deposit. Let's talk about inspections, then we'll get into some of the other stuff. So inspections, and this is a little risky what people are doing. I mean, I don't want to say this is you should do this for every house. This is just what's happening in the market. So
it's the reality.
Yeah, talk about how people are winning offers based on inspections.
Again, it's situational. Each house is different. Some sellers actually do a pre-inspection and they post that information. So if that's the case, then the buyers have that information. They can look at the inspection report. Sometimes.
So what's a pre-inspection? Just to give it assume this is we have people that don't know what, the realtor jargon. So
okay,
explain what a pre-inspection is.
So a seller might hire their own home inspector to come through and do a home inspection. And that is typically what a buyer would do when they elect inspections. They would hire a home inspection to go through the house and basically document any type of defects or repairs that would be needed. So when the seller goes and hires their own home inspector to come through, they do that same home inspection. They go through either the sellers, depending on what's found, they could make those corrections and amend the inspection report with any corrections or repairs noted, or it's just, here's the information about here's what our home inspector found in the home. So then the buyers have more information available to them. What that signals to me is that the seller are looking for the least contingencies in an offer. So the sellers don't want home inspections if they've already done a pre-inspection. They want to limit contingencies. That's that signal that I get from those.
Well, that's really interesting because, I mean, if someone went in and said, okay, I know everything about the property already. I got this inspection report. And for the record, all inspectors are not created equal. There's some that are very fair and balanced. There's some that don't know what they're looking at. There's some that miss stuff. So you got to feel comfortable with that. So you're saying that inspection report's posted, you better be ready to waive the inspections, if I'm hearing you correctly.
That's kind of that's what I get from that. When a seller does their own inspection and posts that information for all buyers to see, to me, that signals they want the least amount of contingencies.
Well, and what I know is that from a ease of transaction, not having a home inspection goes a long way. I mean, there's a value you can put on that. And if someone's willing to waive that, one, they've pretty much lost their ability to back out once that deposit comes in. And secondly, they have confidence in the property. They're buying that home no matter what. And there are some people that you could go and try to negotiate things with the seller and it doesn't work out and they'll buy the home anyway because they want to be there. So that's probably one of the more effective and also a little more risky. So let's say there's no inspection report from the seller. They know they have to waive it to get the property. I know we have some strategies we use here. What would you recommend to someone if they know they have, if in order to get the home, you've got to waive the inspection?
What I recommend, if we know we have to totally waive inspections and the buyers are not fully comfortable with that, then I'll say, well, you can do a home inspection anyway, but just do it for informational purposes. Or if you're willing to accept a certain amount of money towards any repairs or defects found, put a price tag on that. Say the buyers are willing to accept the first $2,500. That tells the sellers that, okay, they're just looking for a major defect. And that way the buyers feel a little bit more protected. The other thing that I have been real successful is requesting that the sellers provide a 1-year home warranty for the buyers if they're going to waive inspections fully. This way the buyers have some comfort that their appliances will be covered, the mechanicals will be covered, like the HVAC. Some of the really good home warranties that are on the market, they even cover roof leaks, electrical and plumbing issues. So that way the buyers feel at least they're protected for that first year. And a lot of times the sellers will concede to that.
Well, it doesn't cost a lot of money. I mean,
Correct.
it's $400 to $700 depending on what kind of coverage you get. So the other thing I would suggest is if you got like a family friend that's a general contractor, or someone that you can call and they've done work for you before, or they owe you a favor and you trust their opinion. I'm serious about this because I mean I've used this before where we've had a lot of people we refer a lot of work to, and there's been situations where that happened, and we did it with our own home. So I mean it's one thing to put your money where your mouth is. Get that person's perspective, because there might be some little ticky-tack stuff that comes up, like plumbing, like vent collars on the roof or GFCI outlets. That shouldn't stop anyone from buying a home. It does. It shouldn't, right? So, get someone to come through that has a contracting or knowledge of house background so you can make sure there's not a lot of issues, because while your realtor should be able to pick this up, a lot of realtors don't know what they're looking at, which we're going to, we're going to talk about that in the future here about the number of realtors relative to the number of homes for sale right now. So we're covering inspections here. I think we kind of let them know, waiving them is an option, getting a contractor to come in, informational purposes only, which I hate that one, by the way. And I'll tell you why, because people say it's for informational purposes only, but it doesn't change the agreement of sale. And then the buyer comes back and asks for stuff anyway. So if you really want to be serious, my view, a little different than Stacey's, and it's different when you can get that to work for your buyer versus when you're working for the seller. It's kind of it's a weird business because we have to look at things from two different lenses or two different perspectives. So informational purposes only may work, or you're talking about a home warranty as well. So we kind of covered all the things we can do there. What about settlement date, timing, and possession?
Settlement date. The first thing I do would be to call the listing agent, get as much information from the listing agent as to when the sellers want to move out. Why are they leaving? When are they leaving? What do they prefer as a settlement date? Do they want 30 days, 45, 60 days, whatever it may be? Some sellers require a lease back. Some of the buyers are fine with that. They're actually okay, with closing on the property and have the seller pay them rent for a couple of months until they can relocate. So all those things are really important, and you can find all that information out from just reaching out and contacting the listing agent.
You bring up a really good point there, calling the listing agent, right? So if you're a buyer out there or you're an agent listening, I'm going to give you some advice right now. Make sure, if you're a buyer, that your agent's actually calling the realtor and letting them know an offer's coming in. Not just emailing it over, no perspective, none of that. That's number one. Secondly, make sure your agent, or if you're the agent, make sure you follow the instructions that people are asking for. Because when you're in this competitive situation, they're looking at ease of deal. They want to make sure they get to the table here. And a lot of buyers agents won't follow the instructions. They don't read them. They just they don't follow anything. They just run around and submit an offer, and they don't know what settlement date they want or anything like that. And the third thing is, if you're an agent, and make sure, and you're a buyer too, be nice, right? Like, make sure your agent is being nice and easy to work with, because anyone that comes off and is abrasive, it's not going to set the right impression. You may think this is a problem or not, or that shouldn't be a factor. Everything's a factor right now. When you're in a market like this, where we need 5 months more of inventory in the suburbs to come onto the market to give everyone equal leverage, these are the things your agent should be doing. So I love calling the listing agent, lease back contingencies, find out when they want to move in. So we got a couple others to talk about here. So let's talk about financing and appraisals, right? So this is an issue because right now we're seeing that the sales data that's out there isn't catching up to where homes are selling for, because the market's been accelerating a percentage point or two a month. So what are you seeing people do with the appraisal and financing issues? Because in a lot of cases, the whole financing is contingent on an appraisal because the mortgage company's got an interest in the home just like anybody else. What's working there?
So obviously, if you're going above purchase price or asking price, I should say, that becomes a factor. The appraisals, and sellers want to know, are the buyers willing to make up appraisal gaps? So if buyers have the finances, that would be something that you would like to include in the agreement also. How much would your buyer feel comfortable closing that appraisal gap? Is it $2,500? Is it $5,000? Is it $10,000? So if that appraisal comes in lower than that purchase price, who's going to cover the gap? For the most part, the sellers aren't interested.
Well, they just think they'll go sell it again because they have
Exactly.
other people waiting in the wings, which I don't blame them.
Yep. So the buyers, how much are you willing to cover that gap?
Got it. Okay. So be ready to come up with additional funds to make up the difference between the sale price and the appraised value. And that's like a whole nother topic about appraisal. So what we'll probably do is we're going to bring an appraiser on and talk to them a little bit, or we'll bring on one of our lenders here. And the last thing that we've seen work really well, and then we're gonna go to break here, is transfer tax. So in Pennsylvania, what that means is that the agreement of sale says that transfer tax is split between the buyer and the seller, right? So what we've seen work is that the buyer says, hey, I'll pay the seller side of the transfer tax. Explain why that's important.
It's important because it's 1% of the purchase price, and in
Philadelphia it's over.
Yes.
It's 2 split in half, and in Philadelphia it's over 4. So there are some different municipalities here. Just to be all encompassing. Keep going, Stace.
So that saves sellers even more money at settlement, so they get more money
without having the appraisal have to be higher.
Correct.
So they're netting more, and that's the most important number, is what you're actually walking away with, right?
So I've been successful in having. Not so much the buyer. In one offer, the buyer wouldn't make up an appraisal gap, but they offered to pay the transfer tax. And that was actually more valuable. The appraisal came back fine, and the seller still got the transfer tax.
Yeah, that's extra money in their pocket where, if it came in at the value, you made a smart business decision there. So what we're seeing is sometimes it's 1 or 2 or 3 of these things. Sometimes it's all of the above, right? So this is why it's important to work with someone locally that understands the market, because what we broke down there, a lot of buyers don't even realize. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a quick break. We walked you through a crash course in winning a bidding war. Next, we're going to come back and talk about what the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, is proposing about foreclosure bans until 2022. This is Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. Stacey, what we're going to hit on next is this is some pretty big news coming from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And this story and this information dropped early April. So the Consumer Protection Group is proposing a rule to prevent foreclosures from being processed until 2022. So to give some perspective here about what's happened before, that they would, so the CFPB, they proposed this rule. Mortgage servicers would not be able to initiate a foreclosure against delinquent borrowers until the end of the year. This would apply to all mortgages, federal and private, only on principal residence. And right now, they expect 1.7 million borrowers to be at risk of foreclosure around September when the forbearance program ends. And that number would be the highest number seen, because at least that's what they're saying. But I don't think it's as easy as, hey, all these people are going into foreclosure right now, because we know of people getting furloughed and the forbearance program. I mean, I don't know that everyone that entered into that isn't working. I mean, I would actually dispute that just from knowing some personal things that have happened here and seeing what some people are doing. So what do you think about all this? I mean, what does this mean for the market? And obviously, this isn't done yet. It needs final approval from all the powers that be, and it's a big result of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, I know that's a big number, 1.7 million borrowers. That's what they're speculating are affected at this point. If they do put an extension on it, it would give them time, some of the borrowers, if they are getting back to work, to either they can restructure their loan if that's a possibility, or if they can catch up on their payments. So it might be a good idea, just so that the foreclosures don't come to fruition, and put a strain. It's not only going to put a strain on the servicers, obviously, and I think that's a big concern, because I know there's been some complaints about servicers not being as receptive and responsive to
totally agree.
people. Yep. So it might be actually a good idea to have it extended.
Well, and I do agree with you, because I think, and there's a couple other options besides just saying, hey, continue to not pay your mortgage, because all that does with these servicers is there's a couple things happening. Interest is accruing, right? These payments aren't going away. This is the thing that a lot of people don't get about forbearance. They tack on the payments to the end of the loan term. So if this is set to expire in September and you haven't been paying your mortgage since the spring of last year, we'll do the math here. We'll call it 14 months, let's say 15 months. Well, you're going to have 15 additional mortgage payments due after the end of your loan term. So it's not all it's cracked up to be. That would be the first thing. And at the same time, there is an obligation to pay. You sign a promissory note. That's what the law says. So, I think the big question that people look at is, one, what's going to be the best way to help protect these people stay in their homes? And then two, what's this going to mean for the market? I mean, I've gotten asked a number of times, I'm sure you had too, are there going to be a lot of foreclosures coming to the market? And that's another thing we want to kind of talk about here. So, what do you envision here? Let's say this rule doesn't get passed.
Doesn't get passed.
What happens in September?
Well, that means that the servicers can proceed on their foreclosures, which a couple of things could happen depending on each individual situation. Hopefully, some folks that want to stay in the home, and they can stay in the home, they've gotten back to work, they can catch up on their payments. The servicers could make available more programs to, restructure some of the loans. So that being said, there are going to be folks that will be falling out of the home ownership due to foreclosure. So that could add inventory to the market. Sometimes it's difficult because if they are real estate owned properties, it's difficult to purchase those, when you're dealing with banks. So it does change it a little bit as far as the buyers that we work with not purchasing conventionally, through a listing agent.
Well, the thing that happens too with these foreclosures is that a lot of times they go to like sheriff sale or auction, right? You can't go inside them to buy these properties. Correct. So everyone thinks they're like, you can go to a sheriff sale and get this great deal on a home. We're talking about people being hesitant on waiving inspection contingencies on homes they did go inside on.
Correct.
Like they actually viewed and looked at them. These you can't even do, and you have to show up with a check. There's no like option to finance there. This is like, hey, I got a check for $500,000, and here's my bid for $500,000. So and there's a lot of people that think they're going to get a deal in this market. It's just not going to happen. I mean, the best deal is getting the house right now. So
right.
My view is that everything you said there is spot on, and it is difficult buying these homes. And a lot of times they have a lot of deferred maintenance issues. They're not in good shape because the people don't have money to do things anyway. If I was in this situation, and if I had someone call me and they asked for my advice, knowing what we know about the market, that it's up 12, 13, 14% year over year, depending on where you are. And that's the range for the greater Philadelphia area, for the Delaware Valley. And knowing that we're seeing the best sellers market in 20 years. I don't know anything past 20. I mean, I would say all time, but we'll leave it at 20 years. That's good enough for a lot of people. I'd be selling the home. I would be cashing out of the property. And a lot of folks that aren't, and this is why I the forbearance program, there are some people that they just filed for it and they're still working. And so to me, it's just bad financial management in a lot of cases. So, I would love them to see them audit this program a little better. And I don't know how you do it, because we see this stuff happen all the time where there's people that are even real estate agents, right? They filed for unemployment during all this, but then they're continuing to work and sell homes. So people kind of use the system a little bit. And, unfortunately, that's what happens all the time. And it's going to have an impact on the market. So, you're in forbearance. What's holding you back from selling your property? Are you getting any objections on this, or are people just wanting to hold on, or what are you seeing on the ground here?
If I'm speaking to a seller?
Yeah.
That's in forbearance? Well, it depends on their situation too,
Good
because
point,
some people are in forbearance, and it might be just a tragic personal situation. So,
Agreed.
divorce, something like that, they might not agree to the terms. So one seller is okay with selling, the other one wants to hold on. It's definitely different. But you're absolutely correct. If you are in forbearance, definitely consider selling. Definitely consider
And
selling.
get some advice, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I've seen so many folks, unfortunately, where and this happens all the time, where they don't know what to do.
Mhm.
They don't get any advice. They don't know what their house is worth. They have no idea.
Right.
All the more reason to contact someone who knows the market. It doesn't have to be us. Just get somebody who knows what they're doing.
Mhm.
The other option is maybe they can do a loan modification. And this
Correct.
is something a lot of folks don't talk about as well, where you got someone that's delinquent. Maybe they lost their job and they got another job, but they're not making as much money. Well, that's where you need to go to the lender and communicate. And in a lot of situations, people don't communicate enough when they just hope it's going to go away or they ignore it.
Mhm.
And that's probably the worst thing you can do.
It's the worst thing because it doesn't go away. That doesn't happen. So, and most of the lenders and servicers they don't want the house. That's not
They
their
absolutely
business.
do not want the
They
house.
don't. That's not their business. They don't want to own real estate.
They want the loan.
They want the loan. They want to lend you money. So they're more than happy to work with you as long as you're in communication with them to try to modify the loan and to get you successfully into a new loan program.
And to give some perspective here, so this is what's happening at the national level, and we got a couple minutes here on Saturday, April 29th, so just about 12 days ago. President Judge of the Court of Common Pleas of Philadelphia stayed off all sheriff sales and tax sales until September of 2021. So for once, the city of Philadelphia is actually ahead of something that's going to do some good here, which I like because a lot of the people that are in forbearance, I mean, unfortunately, they're in situations where you look at Philadelphia. It's a lot different in Philadelphia right now than it is in some of the suburban counties as we're working through these COVID-19 and vaccine issues and everything else. So, I do like the idea of giving people options. And I wish more folks were talking about, hey, look at a loan modification, right? Think about selling, and maybe you I mean, just because, obviously some people may not want to sell. It's better than having a foreclosure on your credit report because that's going to take 7 years to fall off. And then all of a sudden you can't borrow anything. So, it's good to see that, Philadelphia kind of got ahead of it here. I do agree with you that it's either you think about selling. It's not going to be this easy thing to buy a foreclosure and then also look at a loan modification. Anything else we're missing here? Because I think this is an important topic that folks aren't talking about enough. I mean, do you think the CFPB is going to pass this rule, or what do you think is going to happen?
I don't know. I think they're going to pass it, actually. I really do.
I agree. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be passed, because what you don't want to see happen is you don't want to get into a situation where there's people need inventory right now. So it's kind of counterintuitive what we're talking about, but this is not the right kind of inventory you want to see happen in the market. So on that note, we'll catch you guys next week. If you need to get in touch with us, info@tooltimeradio.com. That's where you can reach out to me and Stacey, or if you want to send Sarah congratulations on her new baby. If you want to follow us on Facebook, it's Tom Toole Sales Group on Facebook, or you can follow myself and Stacey on Instagram. I'm at Tom Toole 3RD, at Tom Toole 3rd. She is at the number 2, Mitch Co. We'll be back next week. This is Tool Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM.